Story 1. The Grave Mistake of 19th Century Undertaker, William Tebb. In the 19th century, William Tebb, an Englishman, found himself in an unimaginable nightmare when he was mistakenly pronounced dead and buried alive. Tebb was suffering from a severe fever and fell into a deep unconscious state. In a time when medical knowledge was limited, doctors often struggled to distinguish between a deep coma and actual death. Believing Tebb had died, his family arranged a quick burial. After his body was placed in the grave, a chilling accident occurred. Tebb, still alive but in a coma-like state, regained a faint sense of awareness as the weight of the earth pressed down on him. His initial movement went unnoticed, as the mourners had already left. Trapped in total darkness and with little air left, he struggled desperately to move, gasping for breath as he realized he had been buried alive. His heart raced, but he could barely make a sound. By some stroke of luck the next day, the gravedigger returned to check the plot and heard faint sounds coming from the grave. After hastily digging up the coffin, Tebb was pulled from the grave, bruised, battered, and gasping for life. He was taken to a hospital where it was confirmed that he had indeed been alive all along, having endured nearly 24 hours buried beneath the ground. Tebb's terrifying experience led to him becoming a vocal advocate for safer burial practices. He campaigned against premature burials, pushing for changes in how death was determined. His experience remains a horrifying reminder of how fragile the line between life and death can be. Story 2. The Horror of Anna Bates's Burial. In 1893, Anna Bates, a young woman from the United States, became the subject of one of the most chilling and horrifying near-death stories of the time. Anna had been suffering from an unknown illness that caused her to fall into a coma-like state. In the absence of modern medical technology, doctors couldn't detect the faintest signs of life, and believing her to be dead, declared her lifeless. Her family, devastated by the loss, arranged for her immediate burial. As Anna's body was lowered into the grave, the airless coffin sealed her fate, or so they thought. Hours later, she began to stir. Anna regained consciousness, trapped in darkness and struggling to breathe as her lungs fought for oxygen. Terrified, she realized that she was buried alive. Her heart pounded as she tried to scream, but the weight of the earth above her smothered her cries. In a desperate attempt to survive, Anna attempted to push against the coffin lid, her hands and fingers becoming raw from the effort. With each passing minute, her strength weakened, and she feared her fate was sealed. Yet a miracle occurred. Her body shifted just enough for the sound of scratching and muffled noise to be heard by a nearby gravedigger. The gravedigger, shocked, began digging furiously, finally uncovering Anna's coffin. When he opened the lid, he was greeted by the sight of her bruised, bloodshot eyes staring back, weak and gasping for air. She was quickly pulled out of the grave and rushed to a hospital where, despite the trauma, she survived the ordeal. Anna Bates's experience was one of the most documented cases of a premature burial, and it sparked a public outcry that led to better practices in determining death. Her story continues to haunt the minds of many, reminding us of the terror of being buried alive. Story 3. The Horrifying Ordeal of Angelo Hayes. In 1937, a 19-year-old Frenchman named Angelo Hayes suffered one of the most terrifying experiences imaginable, being buried alive. Angelo, a thrill seeker, was riding his motorcycle in the small town of Saint-Quentin-de-Chalais when he crashed into a brick wall. His head struck the pavement with such force that doctors declared him dead on the spot. His parents, grief-stricken, quickly arranged a burial, and within 48 hours, Angelo was laid to rest. However, something didn't sit right with the insurance company. Just days after the funeral, they demanded an exhumation to verify the cause of death. When doctors opened Angelo's casket, they were horrified. His body was still warm. He had been unconscious but alive for 2 days, entombed beneath the earth. As it turned out, the force of the crash had sent Angelo into a deep coma, lowering his heart rate and breathing to undetectable levels. Buried alive, he slowly regained consciousness in total darkness, trapped inside his coffin. He later described the suffocating terror of realizing where he was, unable to move or call for help. Miraculously, once exhumed, he received immediate medical attention and eventually fully recovered. His story spread across Europe, and he even went on to develop a security coffin equipped with survival features like oxygen and a radio. Angelo Hayes became one of the only known people in history to survive being buried alive. His terrifying ordeal forever a reminder of how close death and horror can truly be.